This past week has been devastating for a lot of Americans, and just watching it has been heartbreaking. In Texas, if you haven't been watching, has some of the worst flooding in generations, and the Guadalupe River rose an astounding 26 feet in just 45 minutes, and it destroyed homes, swept away roads, and it tragically killed at least 82 people, including 28 children at a girls' summer camp. And that was heartbreaking to see. And just as that crisis was unfolding, then Utah ignited, and wildfires are burning across the state over 465 separate fires and over 55,000 acres scorched. And the firefighters are really stretched their limits, and they're trying to contain these flames, but they're also bracing for the next wave. And Utah's governor has recently warned that even after the fires are out, he fears post-fire flooding, because with these burn scars, it can cause deadly mudslides and debris flows when the rains return. And yet FEMA, the federal agency that's supposed to help, has really gone quiet. And it's not their fault. It's our administration's fault. This is what happens when the very agency meant to protect us during disaster is dismantled from the inside out. And FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And under Trump's influence, it's been essentially hollowed out, politicized, and weakened. And just when we need it the most. So you have to ask yourself, what the heck is going on? And Trump has made it clear he doesn't see the federal government as a public service. He sees it as a political tool. And during his presidency, and even more so in the 2024 campaign, he's pushed a so-called deep state purge. And this includes gutting FEMA, really replacing experienced disaster response leaders with political loyalists, and redirecting emergency funds based on political agendas and not need. And in June, Trump said that he plans to phase out FEMA after the 2025 hurricane season, essentially shifting the disaster response and it is entirely to the states. Which having been in the military for 25 years, we have this thing called centralized command and decentralized control. And it's really for efficiency. And what this means for FEMA is that at the federal level, at the FEMA level, they would coordinate the big picture. They would handle funding, logistics, standards. That way we have a standardized response. We have a funding pot to go to when there's an emergency. And with the decentralized control, what that means is that states and communities would tailor the response on the ground to the needs on the ground. And under this structure, everything is efficient, everything is quick. There's a rapid response. And don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. When chaos hits, there's going to be some funds that get wasted. There's going to be some inefficiencies. But essentially, what Trump is proposing is with centralized command, decentralized control. It's essentially the federal government is the brain, and the states are the hands and the feet that make things happen. And together, they respond really quickly, really flexibly, and fairly. But with Trump's plan, he's essentially cutting off the brain and leaving the states to essentially fend for themselves. And we're already seeing the consequences. We're seeing delays in wildfire and hurricane response. We're seeing confusion between the state and federal roles. We're seeing, less disaster aid reaching the low income communities, and emergency housing programs have been slashed. And this is what's happening. FEMA has turned from a rapid response team into a slow, politicized bureaucracy. And it gets worse. Without a unified federal strategy, we all lose. We lose consistency because states begin to set different rules and different standards for training. And we lose equity because the rich states recover and the poor ones fall further behind. We lose speed because time is wasted, lives are lost. We lose accountability because oversight vanishes and corruption grows. Because when disaster hits, people are also looking for a quick buck. And when FEMA goes dark, the most vulnerable suffer first and they suffer the hardest. And here is the bottom line: when disaster strikes, it doesn't care who you voted for. It doesn't care if you live in a red state or a blue state, but if FEMA is gutted, politicized, or phased out, we are all going to pay the price. And as climate disasters grow, these floods, these wildfires, hurricanes, we need FEMA to be stronger, to be smarter, to be faster, not politically neutered or used as a political tool. So if you believe disaster relief should serve the people and not politics, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to know, and subscribe for more fact-based breakdowns on power, politics, power, policy, and what's at stake. It's all of our jobs to stay informed, to stay safe, and not just hear, oh, yep, it's great, we're cutting funding, this is wonderful. We need to stay informed, and most importantly, when disaster strikes, we need to keep showing up for each other, because there is going to be a next storm, there is going to be a next fire, there is going to be the next flood. And this is why I keep going back to the message that America needs to choose love. We need to choose service. We need to choose the people and serving the people. And we don't do that by cutting funding and using it for our own agendas. And so, again, America, choose love, choose each other, and choose to do what's smart.